Welcome to Before After Omu. This is our 9th episode in which we do some traveling with Shoko Asahara and Omu Shinrikyo. From the latter half of 1985 to 1986, Shoko traveled to India with some of his followers and his wife Tomoko.
Thank you for staying with us, and we hope you liked the bonus episodes of our Q&A with Sheffield Dockfest. The festival was online this year, but it was a really amazing experience for us. We had a number of great reviews from the Daily Beast, Screen International, and interviews, which really helped us understand how people were seeing the film. Atsushi, how was your experience? It's your first film festival for the film.
I feel I'm honored to have my directorial debut first feature film at the Sheffield Dock, the premiere, world premiere there. And I'm happy to have a very good reviews. I also feel showing my film and having review is a process of sort of establishing my film in society. It's kind of it's strange feeling, but because I have never released my film, right? Or my own film as a director. So releasing my film is like, I don't know. And having a QA and having interview is sort of establishing my film, in society.
And we ended our run at Sheffield with a conversation with Dan and Garrett over at I Like to Movie. The episode came out last Sunday, so if you want to hear more about the film, check out our episode there. If you're into movies, check out their podcast in general. They did an episode on one of my favorite films, Lose, and I also caught their Cube episode, which was creepy. Okay, so today we're getting into the Dalai Lama. Let's get to it.
If you are a victim, you're a victim. You're not a journalist.
そうですね、来るべきものが来てるんじゃないでしょうか。
I'm Atsushi Sakahara. I'm a filmmaker based in Kyoto, Japan, and I'm a survivor of a sarin gas attack in 1995.
I'm Pearl Chan. I'm a film and birth worker based in Hong Kong.
Before we start today, I want to ask you to please rate and review a podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen. We work very hard on bringing you the truth about this terrible cult and Shoko Asahara. Please support us with a few minutes of your time. Thank you. As with the last few episodes, our research heavily on the work on Fumihiko Takayama's book, Birth of Asahara, Asahara Shoko no Tanjo in Japanese, which has not been translated from Japanese.
Our last episode covered what it would be like to join the organization near the very beginning, when followers numbered in the tens. We focused on that to give people a sense of the control and manipulation Shoko Asahara enacted over his followers. So in May 1986, Shoko Asahara travels to India for the first of many trips with about 5 to 6 members. His plan was to find a guru at an Indian ashram. So if you think through his training so far, right, his theological religious education has been through studying and organizations like Agon Shu, but he's never actually had a yoga teacher. Everything he knows he basically picked up by himself from reading books. So all things aside, right, our understanding is that Shoko Asahara knew his body very well from all his judo training as a teenager, and he was advanced enough in yoga to impress and teach students. So going to India and finding a guru to guide him was a next step, but it also validated his own training, or the training he'd done so far. His education as an acupuncturist and masseuse also helped him understand bodies and also sort of how energy flows, which is when you're getting into this sort of more like mystical yoga, could be very helpful. So anyways, all of them together results in this person who's never had formal training in yoga and now is looking for some sort of some more formal training, or at least some guidance. So he goes to India for this.
So he stayed in New Delhi and visited many ashrams in the area. An ashram is a religious center, like a monastery. Mostly these are run by a guru, or rather a guru set it up to be able to practice and teach. A guru is a teacher, mostly a spiritual teacher, and in the West, it is used often to mean the master of specific disciplines. And so the guru Shoko Asahara takes a liking to is Pilot Baba.
Atsushi, do you know about Pilot Baba?
Yeah, I've heard the name, but I don't know so well. To be honest, I was a little confused about the Pilot Baba and Sai Baba. You know, Baba, right? So
There's also Hari Baba. So Pilot Baba was born July 15th, 1938. So it was his birthday yesterday. We're recording this on the 16th. In Sasaram, Bihar, India, and he became a fighter pilot in the Indian Air Force in 1957. He participated in the Sino-Indian War of 1962 and the Indo-Pakistani Wars of 1965 and 1971. He eventually rose to the rank of wing commander. He's spoken about his time in service. And when he talks about his origin story, he places it at 1962 when he was flying a fighter plane and his radio broke. He couldn't see where he was going and he was expecting to crash and maybe die, but instead his guru, Hari Baba, comes to him and guides him to land safely. And he says that it is because of this that he quit the army and sought a religious life. And that's where the pilot in his name comes from. So this event, this sort of landing of the plane, happens in 1962, and he quits 10 years after this event, and he's discharged from the army, and he begins to take spiritual life much more seriously. Eventually, he finds his niche in samadhi, specifically in burying himself underground for a number of hours or days before emerging reborn. Each time he does this, he counts it as a death, and when he emerges, as rebirth. His guru, Hari Baba, had another disciple who goes by the name Yogamata. Yogamata is a Japanese woman whose secular name is Keiko Aikawa, and she also practiced samadhi, but less often than Pilot Baba. Keiko Aikawa began practicing and leading a religious organization in the 1970s in Japan. The two of them, Pilot Baba and Keiko Aikawa, are recognized as living saints.
They are living saints. I wish I could have the saint instead of PhD. I don't have PhD also. No, many people, intelligent people have a PhD, right, on the business card. Yeah. I have an inferior complex, so someday I want to have a living saint, Saint Atsushi. That's always I have.
You can just add that on. You can just put it on, I'm sure.
So Asahara knew Pilot Baba from Baba's visit to Japan in 1984. When he appeared on TV, so Pilot Baba was already somewhat known and established in Japan. So becoming his disciple or being in some way associated with him would be like an endorsement for him back in Japan. Okay, we will get to another reason this validation is important for him later.
So he goes to India essentially looking for what is termed the final emancipation for him to achieve Buddhahood. And we've talked about this before, the very Japanese way of looking at progression as steps to be taken, tests to be passed. So passing emancipation and gaining Buddhahood was a step very much like getting into a PhD program or getting a promotion. It was the next step up. So in Om's newsletter, Shambhala, he wrote,
"On the morning of May 13th, my body was separated from my soul by Pilot Baba, and I was given a name by a god in my right ear. The saint told me my name was Siddhartha, the name of the Buddha himself. I was surprised that the saint gave me that name now, that I had achieved Buddhahood. A long time ago, someone had told me I was a messiah, and now I was given Buddha's name."
How do you say it in Japanese? In English, we say Siddhartha.
Really? Siddhartha?
Yeah.
Where did I... In Japanese, I don't know, Siddhartha. Siddhartha is a Japanese pronunciation. Godama Siddhartha is a
Anyway,
Japanese way of saying. But it's written in katakana. That's usually used to express the phonetical sound of a foreign language.
I see. Okay. So it seems pretty spectacular, but from the same trip, his followers remember nothing of the sort. One of the people who went with him later reported that in the 2 days he had spent at the ashram, Paila Baba had seen him only once and read his palm, saying to him, "You have a strong fate."
So in July, let me read through, okay? In July, he takes his wife Tomoko with him back to New Delhi, and she takes a number of photos where he can be seen smiling gleefully at his new state of final emancipation. Upon his return, he meets with his members and starts talking about final emancipation. At first, he is really excited to share this new state, but then followers have a lot of questions, every detailed questions, and he doesn't really know how to answer. Eventually, he is stumped, and Ishii Hisako in particular continued to press on about the specifics of what emancipation felt like. So he wasn't sure, he couldn't express it, and one day, he had some gathering, okay, with followers, and to his close followers, he says, "I'm not sure I have achieved the emancipation. How can I achieve emancipation?" He was saying to his followers. And then soon, in maybe several minutes, he climbed up ladders and he started talking. In the big room, he started talking about his emancipation. He said, "I have achieved the emancipation." So those close members were laughing, later. Or also, they were very hard to not to laugh. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Cool.
So I don't really understand. So basically he says, like, did I actually achieve emancipation? Like, he begins to doubt what had actually happened.
Right.
And then does he make fun of it by climbing up a ladder, or what is it?
During climbing up ladder, he seems to have achieved the emancipation. All of a sudden, after going to the big room, and then when he started talking to his people, right? All of a sudden, he said, "I have achieved the emancipation." So that's why people close to him, followers,
laughing. So in a small room before the big gathering, he sort of talks about his doubt, and then when he's in front of everyone else, he talks about his emancipation as he is literally climbing a ladder.
Right. And then he says that,
And is he demonstrating in climbing the ladder, or is he just like going somewhere?
Going to a large room in the upper story. Yeah.
Oh,
second floor or
no
third floor, I don't know. Yeah. Stairs, yes. I'm sorry, not ladder. Stairs, I'm sorry.
Okay, so he's in a small room with his followers, and he's telling them that he has doubt about what he has achieved.
Yes.
And then as he goes up the stairs, he says, "I have achieved emancipation."
No, after he goes to the big room in the second floor, and then to the people, a larger number of the people, right? "I just did the emancipation." If you make an effort, you can do it. You can achieve it. He says, I just achieved. So the people who were listening to what Asahara said right before he climbed up the ladder, when did he do that, Can you believe it? And then those people looking at each other, and then they smiled, Yeah, that's what it is. Do I make sense? Do I? Yeah. Let's explain it again. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and so he announces it to the press in July 1986, but after that he rarely brings it up again with his followers, and his followers either forget about it or they leave.
Smart idea, good idea, right? They don't want to talk about it because okay. So at this point, the organization is still relatively small. It's still small enough for members to fit in a room. Notably, it hasn't been registered as a religion, so they are liable to taxes and other oversight. So the team's next goal is to be registered as a religion.
At the very end of 1986, Shoko Asahara visits the Tokyo office of the Dalai Lama, where he meets Pema Gyalpo. So we're going by the Japanese pronunciation of this. And yeah, I guess we just don't know how to pronounce it. Pema Gyalpo had fled Tibet as a child and lived with his parents in India, where he first attended an Australian-run school before being sent to a school in Japan. He began working for the Dalai Lama in 1976 and was responsible for the Asia-Pacific region when Shoko Asahara came to visit.
Asahara walks in with one hand on the shoulder of Isako Ishii and one hand on the shoulder of his wife Tomoko. The two women are leading him in, and in the course of the meeting, he tells Pema Gyalpo, I have been practicing meditation and yoga for a while now. Would you like to meet the Tibetan elders to get an opinion from them on my progress?
Pema Gyalpo's original impression of him was quite good. He found him earnest and polite. Through their conversation, Shoko Asahara displayed interest and a certain level of familiarity with the theory and practices. Pema also noticed that Asahara did not ask to see the Dalai Lama in particular, but just Tibetan monks. He decided to write a letter of introduction to the Tibetan Exiles Government's Culture and Religion Ministry. He thought,
Shoko Asahara is one of the most famous practitioners with a lot of followers in Japan. Maybe it would be useful for him to meet Buddhist monks. If I cut him off here, it would be bad for the reputation of Tibetan Buddhism.
I also wanted to get, just to, sort of think about the way he looked, right? He walks in, right? He walks in, one hand on the shoulder of his wife, one hand on the shoulder of basically his girlfriend, and they are leading him in as if he were blind. But we know he is not blind and he does not need to be led in. So it's very theatrical.
Right. It's dramatized,
right? It's very dramatized, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's anyways. And you imagine him, he's wearing his white muumuu, and the two women are also wearing religious clothing, and so it's these three floating bodies coming into his office. I don't know. Anyway, so after the introduction letters are sent, Shizuo goes to Dharmasala, where the Tibetan government and exile are, and he's met by Karma Gelek, who would later become the secretary of the Minister of Religion and Culture. So Shoko Asahara explains his visions and sort of the colors of the universe that he can see, and about his previous experiences with Pilot Baba and other Indian ashrams. And so Karma Gelek decides to introduce him to a Tibetan scholar because of Asahara's interests.
After meeting, Asahara said that the scholar was unable to answer his questions and he was quite disappointed in the meeting. After that, Karma Gelek introduced him to two high-ranking monks who were meditating. Asahara was very excited about this and asked them questions about their practice. The monks seemed annoyed and mumbled something, but Karma Gelek did not translate it at the time. But basically the monk said he thinks he is at a high level of practice, but people like him have to be guided well, or else they will cause problem. During the visit, the two other monks expressed similar views about Asahara, that if you want to practice seriously, then you have to follow the teachings of the high-ranking Buddhist monk like the Dalai Lama.
After hearing this, Shoko Asahara becomes obsessed with the idea of meeting the Dalai Lama and requests meetings with him. There's an internal discussion, and the way Karma Gelik tells it is that they thought it would be a good idea for the two to meet because they felt that Asahara was dangerous and needed to be guided. So they arrange a meeting with the Dalai Lama.
Upon meeting the Dalai Lama, he kneels down and put his forehead on the ground. That's the way he's supposed to do. According to Karma Gelik, they met for 40 minutes in which Asahara explained himself, spoke of the bad aspect of Japanese Buddhism, and how he wanted to bring Tibetan Buddhism books with him, not translated into Japanese. The Dalai Lama advised him and praised his interest, but as Karma Gelik puts it, this way was very usual and didn't signify that Asahara was special in any way. The Dalai Lama brought Shoko Asahara to his living area and suggested they meditate together. Shoko Asahara saw this as acceptance and was ecstatic. Karma Gelik says Dalai Lama was concerned about the path Shoko Asahara was heading down and wanted to guide him.
When he returns to Japan, Shoko Asahara has photos of him and the Dalai Lama mounted at the headquarters and printed in the internal newsletter, as well as flyers and brochures about the cult. He travels again to India, going a total of 5 times He travels again to India, going a total of 5 times to Dharamsala and with 2 other visits to India. In 1987 alone, he saw the Dalai Lama 3 times. On the second visit, Karma Gelik's impression of Shoko Asahara changes. When Karma Gelik asks Shoko Asahara how his practice is going, he says, "I am close to Buddhahood now," which surprised Karma Gelik.
Right. He goes on to tell the Dalai Lama the same thing. And the Dalai Lama says, "Oh, really?" He also tells the Dalai Lama that he's been practicing a lot of mysticism and sharing what he's achieved with his followers, including providing his blood to them, which is how he became blind, which we know is not true. At this, Dalai Lama laughs again and says, "Strange, because if you practice more, your eyes are supposed to get better."
It's also at this meeting that Shoko Asahara tells the Dalai Lama that he wants to donate money to the Tibetan government in exile directly to him instead of through the Japanese office. He also tells him that he has about 5,000 followers at this point and they'd like to establish the organization as a religious group. In order to be accepted by the government in Japan, it'd be beneficial for him to have a letter of recommendation from the Dalai Lama. So we will get more into this next episode, into like the sort of politics around getting this letter, but essentially getting this letter is going to help him register the organization as a religious organization. And so we already know that it happens because Om Shinrikyo becomes a religious organization in 1989, and that really changes the course of the organization and what it's able to do. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about this episode and what we've covered, and how most of what we learned is from the writer's interactions with Karma Gelik and with Pima Galpo. And I think it's really interesting, right? Because they don't deny that he went to see the Dalai Lama. And the fact that he went to see the Dalai Lama has been used by various parties to sort of the fact that he went to see the Dalai Lama has been used by certain parties against the Dalai Lama, anti-Tibetan groups, or rather anti-Tibetan independence groups, to say, oh yeah, look, the Dalai Lama is like talking to terrorists. But you have to remember that like at this point he is actually practicing a certain kind of Buddhism, and it kind of makes sense for the Dalai Lama to be open to anything of that sort. I was thinking about this in terms of, if the Mormons went to see the Pope, if the Pope would be like, no, I refuse to see you, or the Pope would be like, interesting, like, let's have a conversation, like a very sort of diplomatic way of doing it. And I think that it's also interesting because a lot of what Karma Galek is saying sort of explains why they let him in, and I think we have to take that with a grain of salt, right? We have to take it with a grain of salt whether or not they actually thought they were guiding Shoko Asahara, or they thought that he was just another practitioner, right? Yeah, I find it really interesting, this idea of like, oh yeah, we let him talk to the Dalai Lama because we thought the Dalai Lama could help him, could guide him on the correct path, but oh no, look what he went and did, and he went down the wrong path. I think it makes it look like they had premonition about what was going to happen, and also it absolves them of the sort of what he was able to gain from these visits. It absolves the Tibetan government in exile from the sort of benefits that Shoko Asahara had by, posing in pictures with the Dalai Lama, having this recommendation letter. Yeah, so what do you think, Atsushi?
Probably the Tibetan Buddhists, including Dalai Lama, had no idea where really Shoko Asahara was heading to. So, maybe you're just one of the group. They have a very strong passion for the Tibetan Buddhism, right? Yeah, that's the way it is. And then Shoko Asahara knew how to use those things very well, and tactically he approached those things. That's what I think. And I don't know. Maybe it's the result of a series of coincidences, but I don't think so. He had sort of either he had a very good hunch, or this direction is a good way, or maybe another thing is like maybe he knew really, and then he did it,
Yeah, I mean, they've probably also met a number of these sort of practitioners and can sort of tell when it's a bit suspicious, maybe?
Maybe, yeah, though some practitioner was suspicious, right? I mean, Sai Baba is very suspicious, I think,
Who is?
Sai Baba.
Oh.
Sai Baba.
No, I don't know
Another
about
Baba,
him.
he's suspicious. Yeah. If you look up on the internet, he shows some tricks, and then not some people believe, so I don't know, but some people say it's a trick, So, but anyhow, so Asahara knew how he can make his group very legitimate, right? And he started building legitimacy or brand of the group, right? Using already established monks like Dalai Lama and other high-ranking monks.
Yeah, but also Pilot Baba, right?
Right, Pilot Baba too. That's right.
Yeah, like these people are known in Japan, and so, yeah.
Yes, for some people, yes, yeah, no. I'm maybe I'm very ignorant, But,
No, but I mean, like,
some yoga
but
practitioners,
it's like self-selecting, right? It's like a group of people who already are interested enough to know about these people, and then, you target those people.
right? That's exactly right. Yes, they're not. They're not to try to convince who doesn't have any interest in yoga.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's no point.
I'm the hardest
in focusing on those
joint
people.
among humans. In humans, I think. Inflexible body I have, so I'm not interested in yoga at all. Really, if I start yoga, something wrong with this world, I tell you.
Yeah.
I have such a stiff body, so yeah. What can I say? So, but this is the moment. I think around this time, this is the moment. Omu is becoming a monstrous organization now.
It's starting, yeah.
Yeah, just starting. Yes, just starting.
Yeah, but not quite
Very
yet.
big, and then they become very internationally active. around this time, Japan was not so international. Japanese is in general not so international, as you may know, right? So they are bold and they fly over to anywhere and they make a deal and get some endorsement or look like, That's the move. It's unusual move as a Japanese people and also Japanese religious group.
Yeah, like being international. Is that very rare? But Soka Gakkai is international.
Yeah, but they become very international, but they started becoming very dominant, strong in domestically first, right? And then Asahara and then Omu's case is trying to be dominant. He used international, how can I say, authority, or legitimacy, or legitimate group, He play with it, He plays with it, It's very rare.
Right.
Usually, we don't have so many Japanese who do that, I don't know, so that's Soka Gakkai is like spending a long time building Soka Gakkai by self by Daisaku Ikeda made it very large organization, right? And with lots of money, he established branches and he runs it, right? But Asahara's case is different,
And we're going to see a lot more of that, right? We're going to see a lot more of what he does internationally. So for the next episode, we're going to be talking about how OM is structured and also what the recommendation letter means for the organization. So that's 2 episodes. I don't know which one we're going to go to first, but very exciting. We're going to see what OM looks like when it really gets going. But also just really interesting and how it's structured in terms of an organization.
Right.
Because their ultimate goal was actually to take over Japan. So
that's right.
We'll get there.
Yes.
So, Atsushi, you want to sign us off?
Yes. Please listen and subscribe wherever you listen. Review and ratings helps other people find us. Thank you for listening. Reach out to us on Twitter at Cult Leader and me. No, I think it's wrong, right? No? Reach us.
Twitter, you're right. It's before after OM.
Okay. So let me tell. Okay.
Sorry.
It's all right. Before. Please, all right. Please listen and subscribe wherever you listen. Review and ratings help other people find us. Thank you for listening. Reach out to us on Twitter at before after OM. Thank you.
Thank you.